Good evening, everyone. At this time, I will call to order the business meeting of the Faribault Public Schools School Board here on September 23rd, 2024. As listed in the agenda, we have our strategies. And Ms. Steves, as clerk, would you determine if we have a quorum present?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we do.
Thank you. I would invite everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to those of you in attendance and those of you viewing online. On our agenda, item number 2 is approval of the agenda. A motion for approval of the agenda, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Robichaud. And do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item number 3, recognition, awards, and presentations. There is none. Item 4, items of information, student board representatives. Ms. Julian Huberty, please.
Hi. So I'm reading off my phone because I was not prepared and did not charge my computer. So that's what I'm looking at. I have a few things for you guys tonight to talk about. The first thing is the Photo Voice Project. So I brought this, I kind of told you all about this before school ended. It might have been that June meeting. About how there would be pictures, students would take pictures of things that they saw around the community, and then they would submit them, make a photo gallery. So that has been reevaluated by the Prevention Partnerships for Healthy Youth, or PPHY Coalition, and the team has a new plan going forward. So Ashlyn Zerbriggen and then Angie Ramirez are now having youth answer a series of 3 questions. I don't remember off the top of my head, but they're like, what makes you feel hope in Faribault? What is something that you care about? And what is like something healthy and safe that you do? So much more positive questions that then youth can take a picture of throughout Faribault. And then after everyone takes a picture and submits it, we will then go ahead and youth will get to decide on which pictures they think like best represent hope, best represent healthy activities in the community, and that will be made into a traveling collage that can be spread around the community. So it could be at the library for a couple weeks. It could go to Subway. It could go to different places around the community so that community members can see what the youth view as hope in the community, healthy activities, whether that's like, I view my church as a place that is a hopeful place for me, or my dog or my cat. The swim team is something that's a healthy, safe activity. So different things so that we can get, perspectives from all different youth around our community. And then that way everyone else can see those, and this gallery will move around town. That's what I have for the Photo Voice Project. And then we had our district youth council meeting last week on Wednesday, I think. And so from that, I have some feedback for you about just different things going on at the high school regarding like the cell phone policy. So one thing that I heard a lot was majority of students have found it to be very effective for themselves and for teachers. So I think that's a really important note to look at, that students themselves are recognizing that the phone policy has benefits. They're recognizing it themselves. They also found that it was super helpful for teachers. A lot of students said that they believe that the first warning before taking the phone is really helpful too, because it's sometimes we just go on our phone when it's become such a habit of our day that we just pull out our phone, that it's you forget to do it. So a warning first and not having to be taken down to the office immediately has been super helpful, because, yep, I need that reminder, got it, it's away for the rest of the day. Some students feel frustrated that they can't use their phones after they finish assignments, but then what I learned, which I didn't know, was that during study hall, students are given board games and coloring sheets that they can work on, which I think is an amazing thing. I would love to do during study halls. So that way it's a time for kids to connect and play with other people instead of going on their phones, which I think is a great just different thing than sitting on your phone, not talking to anyone. Regarding substance abuse at the high school, students feel that substance abuse is a very prominent issue. There are people puking in bathrooms due to substance abuse. This is like affecting other students, right? Because imagine you just finished third period English and you try to go to the bathroom and you see kids puking because they're doing illegal substances. And that's just happening. And then what do you do about that? Like, how's that affect the rest of your day? Does it make you feel great as a student? Students feel that they can't use the bathrooms because of other students abusing substances. And then I think one thing that's really stood out to me is, and that is a very important issue to me, is students are afraid to report information because of that information getting out that they reported it, right? Those social and physical consequences, even if they're unintended, how they affect students. And a lot of students said that they feel as if it's placed on them to report these things when they feel like they should just be able to go about their day without having to take on the responsibility of and the burden of reporting every time someone is doing something, not being able to go to the bathroom, stuff like that. So that's what I have for you as a report. On a happier note, we have homecoming in hold up, it's on my calendar, next week. The 4th is our football game. We have our neon dance Saturday at Jefferson at 8:30 to 11. So that's our neon dance. That's become our new tradition. Sunday we have powder puff. So that's girls play football. One thing we've changed up this year with student council is we have now made all the rest of our activities during the day, during that Falcon support time, because we found that's a better, more equitable way for all students to be able to come in and watch and participate in activities, as in they don't have to pay and it's during the school day. So if you don't have rides, if you have activities going on after school, you can still be a part of our dodgeball, our powder buff, which is volleyball, and all these different activities. And then our regular coordination is on Monday, and then we have our big Pep Fest on Friday. So that's my update.
Excellent. Thank you. Item 4B is items of information, school board members. Looks like we're...
Chair, I would just like
Ms.
to...
Boudreau.
Thank you. I did visit Lincoln School, which I supposedly represent.
Okay.
And I asked to look in the classrooms where we had 34 students, and I did so. The principal took me around the school, and they were doing quite well at that moment. So I'm just saying, it was good to visit that class, see that we have teachers that are very competent in managing their classrooms. I think it was a third grade class. So just wanted to report that.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. Chair?
Ms. Moore?
Yes, I had the pleasure of meeting with the Faribault Middle School music teachers last week and 2 Faribault High School.
Ms. Moore, excuse me, would you pull your
I'm
mic
sorry.
just a little bit? Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, I had the pleasure of visiting with I was going around to the different schools, and the Faribault Middle School music teachers and 2 of the Faribault High School teachers, music teachers. And it was also a pleasant experience. I got to listen to some of the practicing at the Faribault Middle School of the choir and of the band, and they are really good. So I appreciate that. And I can't wait to go. I think the fall band concert, I'm going to put a little plug in here for the Faribault Middle School, is November 12th at 6 p.m. And I do appreciate the fact that 2 now at the Faribault Middle School, they're teaching students how to read music. And I wish that I had that in middle school, because I still don't know how to read music. But another thing here, I'm going to just put a little plug in here. I always talk about the basics of reading, writing, and math. But I think music is also a fundamental basic, because the research shows, its relationship to brain development and learning. So I think it's an important piece. And because of this, I really believe that we need to have a more viable music program in the elementary schools, especially, orchestra and band, and we don't have that right now. Otana has it, I do believe, in Northfield. But I think that would be a good thing to have, to start up again. I know we had it, and I don't know when we stopped that. Was it 10 years ago, or maybe, I don't know what the date was on that. But I think it's very important for brain development, and I think we should try to, as a board, figure out how to reinstate that with the band and the orchestra and have more of the music program at the 4th and 5th grade. Thank you.
Anyone else? School board members? No? Okay, we'll move on to item 4C then, items of information, Superintendent Venti.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a list of things here to kind of go through. We really recently found out that our Faribault Multicultural Adult Drivers Education Program was selected as the Minnesota Community Education Association's 2024 statewide project award. So Joe Pinka, Jessica Velasquez, Cassie Riopel, and Zach Pruitt have done a remarkable job of launching this new program over the past year. They set out to serve 25 adults, and I believe the board has heard this before, and it ended up serving 346 adults last year. The award is presented at the luncheon on Thursday, October 24th at the Duluth Entertainment Convention Center as part of the statewide community education convention. And then we'll have them give a presentation at our regular board meeting on October 28th. The University of Minnesota surprised Andrea Moyer, who's one of our 8th grade teachers, and they surprised her AVID class with a $2,000 donation for her classroom. She was selected because of her dedication to the AVID program and her commitment to making memorable experiences. The U of M even made a second donation in the amount of $1,000 to Principal Fox for use in the building there. So thank you to them. Jefferson students learned what it means to soar by being safe, on task, accountable, and respectful. Principal Nick Jurins did a skit with 2 students. I will say, since he is not here, but his acting skills were far less superior than the students were. And then Mrs. Cox swore in some of the safety patrols and had them demonstrate how to cross the street safely. He didn't just walk in, did he? All right, I just want to make sure. Mrs. Isaacson and Mrs. Men's 5th grade participated in a diner experience where they sampled books to figure out what genre they were. It was a fun way to make sure students were meeting 5th grade curriculum standards. And then Faribault FFA partnered with Holden Farms and gave away 250 burgers and pork chops at a recent football game to promote agriculture in Rice County. Roosevelt SOAR program, their student council were selected based on their application stating why they wanted to represent Roosevelt. A few students shared, "I care about making Roosevelt a better place to be for everyone. I want to be part of more events and be creative in our planning. I want to take Roosevelt to even higher as we soar through the sky to success. I want every kid to have an amazing time at school." I was at Lincoln this morning, and I was speaking with a young man, I believe he was in 3rd grade, and I said, "Hey, do you know the SOAR acronym?" And he said, "Yes, I do." And I walked him through each letter, and I said, "Can you tell me what it is?" And he said, "Yes, I can," and he told me. I said, "And can you tell me what that means?" And he said, "Yes, I can," and he told me. So our students are very much learning around, especially our PBIS efforts and our SOAR. Our high school choir and theater students got a special lesson from a professional singers and actors, and they learned how to use voice as a tool to express emotion, build character, and tell a story. Hundreds of students, parents, and family members and staff attended Jefferson's Welcome Back Family Picnic. Sodexo served free hot dogs and hamburgers along with snow cones from Kona Ice. This year was probably the biggest turnout we've had. So. Tegan Embry, a junior at Faribault High School, was recently recognized for completing, the requirements of the pre-gold skating skills test conducted by the U.S. Figure Skating. Last week we celebrated IT Professionals Day. Our IT team supports our students, parents, staff, and school board, and we're grateful for the work that they do to keep our networks and programs running smoothly and securely. A lot of people don't realize that we've had quite a few internet outages and kind of scares in just the first few weeks of school already. So that was something. And my last piece is to introduce our new Director of Finance and Operations. Barbie Raisler is here. She comes to us from New Ulm and Fridley, where she was a Director of Business and Operations, and she spent 25 years at Region 5, correct? Smart Region 5, working for them as well, which is a program and company that we use. So welcome to Barbie. Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Benty. Moving on to agenda item number 5, public comment. We have one person for public comment. It's Mr. Damian Baum. And his topic is reorganization. Good evening, Mr. Baum.
Good evening, Board. I don't want to steal any thunder from Superintendent Benty on the actual reorganization presentation, but I do want to thank both the board and the district and the administration for the opportunity to have the reorganization committee to get a sampling of both staff and community to get input on what I believe is a serious consideration. This is something that at one of the meetings we did address, that this is a need for the district. This is not a school issue, this is a district issue. And I think as we look forward, as even one board member mentioned tonight, looking at programs, one of the considerations is looking at costs that we can eliminate and looking at efficiencies that we can achieve. And I'm hoping as we look at the reorganization and that proposal goes forward, that we keep those considerations in mind and what's best for the community, the students, and the district, and really keep a broad focus on what our future can be and should be. So thank you, Board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Baum. Agenda item number 6 is the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of minutes from the August 19th, 2024 and September 9th, 2024 business meeting and work session, employment, additional assignments and other, and authorization of payments, transfers, and investment account. Motion for approval of the consent agenda, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Second.
Second?
Thank you, Ms. Steves. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item number 7, District Advisory Committee, there is no report. Agenda item number 8, Policy Committee. Ms. Moore and Ms. Steves, I will turn that over to you.
Sure, and then you can fill in. As at the last meeting that was on September 3rd, we had a number of revision of policies, and I just want to, for the audience, and to remind the board too, when we do revisions, we look at the revisions and changes. We do not look at the entire policy. And we had most of those, I think, all of them except for one, and that was the last one, which was a new one. It was a library policy, and it was voted to move it to the school board to discuss, and I have a feeling it's going to go back and forth to the school board and policy committee for a while, because it needs a little work, so. Cassie or Ms. Steves, do you have any additions to that?
I think you summarized quite well.
Any board members, any questions on the Policy Committee minutes or report? Okay, very good. Let's move on to 7B. Consider approval of revisions to the following policies reviewed by the Policy Committee at the August 6th, 2024 Special Policy meeting. First policy, and we're going to do these two separate. Policy 613, graduation requirements. Motion for approval of policy 613.
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Robichaux. And do we have a second? I'll second it. And discussion. Any discussion on the graduation requirements? Mr. Benty, any input? Policy committee members? is all laid out.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Moore?
I would like to, and I think this was a matter that should be brought up before the board. I just do have one concern with that. It's under definitions. It's at the bottom of the first page, 613-1. It does say required standard means a statewide adopted expectation for, and they added health in there, and actually removed the stipulation that it should be adopted expectation for student learning and health. Wait a minute, if I can look at that, and that was from the community, a locally adopted expectation, for student learning and health. They took that out. My concern with that is that I think that the state is essentially taking the health standards out of the hands of the local community. We are an independent school district, and we should have say over our health standards. I was elected to represent the people and for the community. And I think we should not allow the state to take away the will of the people of Faribault. And so that's my problem with that the state is coming in, because it did take out locally adopted expectation for student learning and health. And that's the problem I'm having. Thank you.
Further discussion? Further discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Boudreau?
Maybe I could ask the policy committee, this also includes the revisions for the ethnic studies? Or is this not in this component?
No, that wasn't in the revision part,
Okay.
but
Sorry.
I could have spoken with the
I
health.
read a lot of
Yeah,
bills today.
yeah.
This is within, we're still on policy 613.
Right.
So
Yes, thank
is
you.
it
But
contained
that
in-
does have to do with the ethnic standards too, but it wasn't a revision. But yes, I do have a problem with that aspect too.
Ms. Boudreau's question answered?
Yes,
Okay, very good.
thank you.
Any further discussion? We are ready to vote. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No,
We'll do a roll call, please. Ms. Steves, will you do a roll call?
Linda Boudreau,
No.
Linda Moore,
no,
Richard Olson,
No.
Jerry Robichaud,
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye, Chad Wolf,
Aye.
John Bellingham.
Aye. Motion passes 4-3. Thank you. Policy 522, Title IX, Sex Non-Discrimination Policy, Grievance Procedure and Process. Motion for approval of Policy 522.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. And do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Robichaud. And discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Boudreau.
this policy, which was supposedly took effect in August, on August 1st, has been brought to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has upheld injunctions in about 26 states right now, where it has allowed them to opt out of this. Minnesota, I don't think we can opt out, but I feel like it's premature to pass this because I think there's more decisions to come, and I am not able to support it.
Further discussion?
Mr. Bellingham.
Mr.
can I-
Wolf.
Can I just ask, Mr. Benty, following up on Ms. Boudreau's comments, that she, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but to your understanding, we can't opt out. I don't believe Minnesota is one of the states that has filed a suit or asked for an injunction or anything like that. So if we don't pass it, what are we, in where we sit today, if you will, what are we potentially opening our district up to or anything like that, to the best of your knowledge? I realize you're not a lawyer or anything of that nature, but.
So I will actually have Nicole Yoakum, our Human Resources Director, come forward she put together a bulleted list on what could potentially happen to Faribault Public Schools if it doesn't comply with this. What Mrs. Boudreau said around the Title IX policy is exactly true. 26 states at current count have challenge this in court. Minnesota is not one of those states, so there is no injunction at this point for Minnesota to not do this. And it's highly unlikely that Minnesota will file, simply because it's already in, the language in question is already in either the civil rights documents of the state of Minnesota or the Constitution of the state of Minnesota. So Nicole, do you want to, I believe your question was what could be the possible repercussions if the board doesn't pass this? And
Thank you.
Nicole, I know you put some of those together.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. So I have put together kind of 6 of the top biggest things that stick out. So noncompliance with Title IX, which prohibits discrimination based on sex in any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance, can have serious consequences, especially for public employers. So the biggest one, the most immediate and significant consequence is the potential loss of federal funding. So if a public employer, such as a school or a university, does not comply with Title IX, the federal government can withhold funds for programs under its jurisdiction. So that's the most significant and immediate one. The second one is we would be opened up for liability against lawsuits and legal action. Non-compliance with Title IX can lead to litigation. Individuals can file lawsuits for discrimination, harassment, or retaliation under Title IX. And in some cases, organizations can have class action lawsuits brought against them as well, resulting in costly settlements and judgments. The third piece is opening us up to federal investigations and audits. The Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights, or OCR, is responsible for enforcing Title IX. If a complaint is filed, then OCR may initiate an investigation. If violations are found, then we may need to enter into a voluntary compliance agreement or face enforcement actions. Another piece, number 4, that I looked up is just having damage to our reputation. So if we fail to comply with Title IX, we may experience severe reputation damage. It can negatively impact our ability to attract students, employees, or even funding from non-governmental sources. Also, from non-compliance, we would definitely have some increased oversight from agencies, federal agencies. So after a violation, a public employer may be placed under ongoing oversight by the federal government. This can include regular audits, detailed reporting requirements, and compliance monitoring that can burden our resources that we have here at the school district. And then lastly, but certainly not least, this can have a negative impact on our students and our staff. Non-compliance may lead to negative impacts on student and staff experiences, especially if gender-based harassment or discrimination goes unaddressed. This can result in a less safe and equitable environment for employees and students.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Wolf?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Further discussion, board members? Ms. Moore?
Mr. Chair, yes, I just wanted to mention that the original intent of Title IX was an anti-discrimination law to ensure equal opportunities for student athletes. And this was, I think, 1972, which is about the time that I was would have been in college. Women were legally excluded, I think, from athletic opportunities. And I think women and girls in athletics, they deserve fair treatment and fair competition. And I don't think this is really, in a way, it's not a bipartisan issue. But I do think that, and because just the facts are we being fair to our girls if we require them to compete against compete in athletics against individuals who are 10 times as much testosterone or 1.5 times as much muscle mass, and that's from medicine.net. And just look at Riley Gaines with Leah Thomas. He was bigger than she was, and there's lawsuits on that too, from that end now. I think this could possibly, girls could, in our athletic students, the females, could miss out on scholarships and championships, and that has happened across the nation. I think Riley Gaines was the biggest one, but there's been others too, and so that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Last call for discussion. Seeing none, we are ready to vote. I'm going to ask for a roll call just right off the bat here. Ms. Steves, will you do a roll call on the motion for approval of policy 522, please?
Linda Boudreau,
Abstain.
Linda Moore,
No.
Richard Olson,
No.
Jerry Robichaud,
Aye.
Kathy Steves, aye, Chad Wolf,
Aye.
John Bellingham.
Aye. Motion passes with the abstention going in to the affirmative, 4-2. And we will note that one abstention was made. Pardon me? 5-2, sorry, can't count, 5-2. Thank you. Agenda item C, 8C, first reading of policies. Policy 540, acceleration policy and procedures. Policy 308, administrator/director evaluation. Policy 416, drug, alcohol, and cannabis testing. Policy 503, student attendance. Policy 515, protection and privacy of pupil records. Policy 532, use of peace officers and crisis teams to remove students with IEPs from school grounds. Policy 616, school district system accountability. And new policy 606.5, library materials. Any questions or input on the first reading of those policies?
I'm gonna make a motion to move item number 8, 606.5 separately. Take the first 7 as a bunch.
Well, we're not approving, this is just the first reading, so we're not approving, but, so is your motion to refer policy 606.5 to committee, is what you're,
Correct, yep.
okay? So we'll have that as a motion, so let's leave the number 8, the new policy 606.5, just want to rehash any of the previous 7, as Ms. Steves, is there any questions regarding any of those for the first reading of those policies here? Okay, seeing none, so then, next now we'll move down to that, Ms. Steves. So you have moved to send new policy 606.5 to refer that to committee. And I will second that. And now we have a discussion. Do you wish to speak to your motion or?
As Ms. Moore alluded to, I think that this policy is, needed, but I do think that there needs to be significant discussion at the committee level. I don't think that the policy is ready to be at the board level, even at first reading. I don't disagree with the policy, but I have quite a few unanswered questions, especially in regards to like the review process and as it relates to the policy in whole.
Very good.
Mr. Bellingham,
Mr. Wolf?
on that policy, so Ms. Steves and other policy members, committee members, would you like, if we have questions or thoughts, would you like us to send them to you? Would that make sense? I have several questions on, I think it's section 7D2, which is the committee makeup, if you will. I have just several questions regarding the makeup of that committee. Is that the proper thing to do? I mean, obviously, thank you to all of you and anybody else that serves on that committee. But is that the best way?
I think, yeah, send it to Mr. Benty and he'll forward that to the policy committee.
Yes,
Okay.
That was a question, but
yes. We can forward that to maybe myself and Mr. Benty, and we'll forward them to the policy committee.
Okay.
Like that, Mr. Wolf.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, so if I may, what you're suggesting is that if we have any concerns or possible changes, we would forward to Cassie or Linda on who else is on there? Just the two?
The board members,
The board.
well,
I would just.
Why don't you send them to Mr. Benty and myself, and we will forward them to the two committee members.
Okay,
The
thank
the
you.
policy committee in its
Yes.
entirety. How's that?
Mr. Chair, just a point of clarification, until a new policy is adopted by the board, the current policy is in place, is that correct?
We do not have a current policy of 606.5.
You don't have anything about review of materials?
What we do have is review of curriculum materials, which falls in 606, but nothing that has to do with non-curricular library materials.
All right, thank you.
And board members, I'm very pleased that this is being referred back to committee because I've gone through this quite thoroughly multiple times. I watched the committee, the policy committee, multiple times like that. And having a former member of the policy committee, I believe for 4 years, when a policy is recommended to the board here for approval, I believe it should be a real solid, virtually no holes barred policy. And I see there's going to be and is a lot of questions with that. And in watching that vote, there was also a vote that it was understood by the policy committee in that vote that it would be sent, the board would probably be kicking it back to them or sending it back to them. Some of my questions will also be item number 4. I'm not going to go into too many detail on item number 5 and 7 as well. But we'll get into more detail to do that. But being a new policy, and I think this is a great thing of what the board is doing, sending it back, is that new policy, we really need to vet this thoroughly and thoroughly and thoroughly. Because this was asked, I believe back in April or so, to develop procedures and policies on how are we going to do the library books, and I think this is it. So,
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Boudreau.
if I may, I appreciate the fact that it should be ripe for a committee vote. And I appreciate that it's going to be reviewed. And I would just suggest that we also review those 2 letters we received from people who were very involved in this. They had a couple of suggestions, and I just think it would be respectful to review those. If you don't have them, maybe we could find them and resend them. I think you know who I'm talking about.
I believe I still have
2
them.
people.
I still have them, yes.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Welcome.
yes,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Yes, I do
Ms. Moore.
agree with Ms. Vidro on that. And the one reason I think that I wanted to send it back to the school board is I wanted some guidance, and I think maybe the other members too wanted some guidance from the school board as to what, and I think we will be getting that with questions. And so I'm pleased that we are doing it this way, because I think we needed some guidance from the board, and we will be getting that with the questions.
Good.
So thank you.
Last call for discussion?
One thing I just want to be clear, because I don't want this to be bouncing back and forth between committee and the board, more times than it needs to. I do want to get it right, but I don't want it to be just in this continual loop of being bounced back and forth. The questions are going to help us, but also, I think more importantly is if the board has concerns that were in there. And I know, Mr. Chair, you asked for those last time and we received 2, maybe 3 emails.
I received 1.
Okay, and I received 1, and I believe there was 2 then. And those concerns were reflected in some of the changes that we made to this going forward to the committee. What we're really asking for is, if you have pieces that you want changed sooner rather than later, please get them to us, because many times what I need to do is, I don't just say, oh, yep, put it in there. Many times what I need to do is call the attorney and say, can I put this in here? And that sometimes will take a few days. So So the questions are great, but we also are very much looking for, the committee, I should say, when I say the committee is very much looking for, how does the board want this to look? So,
And may I also add, board members, that there is a difference between policy and practice and procedure. So policy sets the agenda or arena, but practice and procedure are the details which management decides. So there's a big difference there. So I know some of the questions might be, in fact, I was just thinking, probably have some of those as well, that might be more in the weeds of management, but policy is not that. So just some items of thought, but I think, I agree with everyone. We don't want to go back and forth till a year from now or another 3 months or whatever, but let's just get this out and get it right. So we are ready for a vote here to send policy 606.5 back to the policy committee. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Thank you. 8D is consider approval of the second reading of new policy 507.5, school resource officers. Motion for approval of new policy 507.5, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Robichaud.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. And discussion, Mr. Benty or members of the policy committee, I will refer to you. Anything? It was all spelled out very well within the policy.
yeah, it just, the main heading titles there explain what a lot of this is. Once again, a new policy, more focusing on contractual duties, with a couple definitions in there, and then training requirements as well. So those are pieces that are new for school resource officers.
Excellent. Any further discussion? Last call for discussion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item number 9, Finance Committee, the finance report from the August Finance Committee minutes. Seems like many days ago, but basically as it says in the minutes here, the Finance Committee approved the fiscal year 2024-25 school resource officer contract that we just did. We also approved additional kindergarten teacher at Roosevelt, growing number of students at Roosevelt and with the immersion program, et cetera. And we approved the ice arena contract, the 2024-2025 ice arena contract. And then also we discussed approval of the Faribault Band, Choir, and Orchestra extended field trip, and that tabled that, and that's coming up later in our agenda there. So that's a report of the minutes of that meeting. The finance piece of it, you can see the investment report on board book. All our finances are all in order. Our numbers that we have for projection of within our budget is spot on there. So basically, that was what discussed in a more brief meeting. So, Mr. Wolf or Ms. Boudreau, if you have anything else that you can remember from August, I appreciate that. So,
Mr. Chair, are you going to go over the September meeting?
well, it just says August meeting here, so I guess we're
I know.
supposed.
Some of the issues we're discussing tonight, we just had at our last finance meeting, so maybe I'll mention that when we get to them.
We can, yes. I think that's maybe what we'll do. That was approved by the finance committee, and then
Good.
I'll do it that way if that's okay with that piece there. Any questions on the finance committee report? All right. Let's move on to agenda item number 10, other matter, gifts and donations. We have resolution 25-04. Resolution 25-04, approvals of the donations to the Nest of the United Methodist Church, donated 60 backpacks, pens, highlighters, feminine products, folders, and more. Also to the Nest, Pat Johnson donated 1 bag and a box of scrunchies. Also to the Nest, Mayo Clinic Health System donated various school supplies collected through Mayo Clinic, estimated value of approximately $500. Also to the Nest, the Salvation Army donated school supplies and hygiene products. And lastly, to the Nest, Morgan Klum donated feminine hygiene products. Also donated from the Faribault Rotary Youth Services donated $10,000 to support Little Falcons. The Knights of Columbus donated $302 to Special Services for Faribault Middle School Falcon Cafe to support developmentally disabled programming. And lastly, Josh and Amy Hager donated $4,000 to the Faribault Area Learning Center for experiential learning opportunities for all students. So, motion for approval of Resolution 25-04 as I have just read.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Boudreau. And do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Steves. And discussion.
Mr. Bellingham, just a huge thank you to all these people and organizations that continue to support our students and our school district and in our community.
Exactly.
Chair, some of these are substantial donations, and we're very grateful for all of the donations, especially those substantial ones, keep our programs operating.
Exactly. And I will echo what everyone has said. Thank you. Your gifts and donations do matter and make a big difference for our students in our district. So, any further discussion? Ms. Steves, this is a roll call item, please.
Linda Boudreau,
Aye.
Linda Moore,
Aye.
Richard Olson,
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud,
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf,
Aye.
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you, passes 7-0. Thank you, Ms. Steves. 10B, consider approval of the Faribault High School Music Department field trip to New Orleans, March 23rd, and it says on here 24th, but I believe it's a longer time than 2 days trip, but that's what it says on my thing here. I hope to New Orleans and back one day, it's pretty good. So
So
let's
moved.
have a motion for approval of the Faribault High School Music Department field trip to New Orleans.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Boudreau. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. And before we have discussion here, to begin discussion, just as a sidebar here, as Ms. Boudreau pointed out, this agenda item was approved by the Finance Committee in our September meeting. So, Mr. Benty, would you introduce our
Mr. Ben
Presenter.
Beaupre is our choir director at Faribault High School. So go ahead and walk us through your trip to New Orleans.
Yeah, thank you for having me here tonight. I'm here on behalf of our music department, which also includes our band director, Mr. Andrew Dussel, and our orchestra director, Mr. Michael Sloan. As you can see, as is obvious by now, we're headed to New Orleans next spring break. We are bringing about 20 students, and I think we're at 4 adult chaperones and 2 of our 3 music teachers. So a little under that 40 that is listed on the paperwork that's in front of you. We are going to all the classic New Orleans sites. We'll start with some of the highlights to get you hooked on this trip, right? We're looking at a lot of jazz history, going through Jazz Museum, hitting up Café du Monde for some beignets, of course, the National World War II Museum, the New Orleans School of Cooking, so we'll get to learn how to cook and then taste some Cajun and Creole cuisine, the Jazz Museum, the French Quarter, swamp tour of the Whitney Plantation, before a dinner cruise and heading back to Faribault. Looking back at the paperwork that we submitted, we are using a company called Gateway. They're a music travel company. We've used them for years. I've traveled with them as a teacher and as a student myself. They are phenomenal because they focus just on music trips and how to make trips ideal and wonderful for music groups. The cost of the trip currently is $1,900. That has fluctuated actually quite a bit in the last couple weeks, but we've been working really diligently. And when I say we, I really mean our tour company, our tour manager, at keeping that cost at what was advertised to students, if not lower. So we've been able to shuffle around quite a bit. I think those of you who work with numbers and finance for the district would be very impressed with how much this tour company was able to keep this trip affordable for our families. We, of course, present fundraising opportunities to our students every year that they are in our high school music ensembles, 2 or 3 fundraiser opportunities every year so they can raise funds as they march through the music program from 9th, 10th into 11th and 12th grade. We also, this year, we're really excited to receive a very generous donation to our Music Boosters program. And because of that, we were actually able to present scholarships to students that wanted to travel. So we awarded, let me pull up my numbers, over $4,000 in scholarships. Not all of them are going to be utilized in the end, but still about $2,500 of those payments are being made on behalf of our students by a donor in the community. So we're very, very grateful for that. With that being said, I think I've covered what I have on my sheet, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Board members, questions? Dr. Robichaud.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Just one question. Will there be opportunities for students to perform while they're on there?
Yeah, that's a great question. We actually are not going to be performing on this trip, and that's a change from previous music trips. Part of that, as we discovered on some recent tours, was that when we have 20 students, for example, going on this trip spread between band, choir, and orchestra, the numbers are, for balance-wise in our ensembles, are really interesting. I know on this trip we only actually have 3 students from orchestra that will be traveling. We have then split about a dozen from band and choir, and the instrumentation of the band, the balance between voice parts can be a little disjunct, and it makes it really difficult, and sometimes it's a disservice to the students that do travel because they find themselves uncomfortable and out of place with our ensembles that are performing. In an ideal world, we have a full ensemble and can perform, but that was just not the case with this. Our tour company, Gateway, also we expressed that concern that we wouldn't really have a solid performance opportunity, and they told us that a lot of schools are actually switching to this kind of strategy of traveling these tours. I know it does say performance tour on the itinerary, but less performance but more music appreciation, such as going on the jazz history tour, visiting Preservation Hall, which is a really iconic jazz venue in New Orleans. So learning that sense of appreciation for music through other methods that aren't performance.
Mr. Chair, a follow-up question. So then, when they visit the jazz history, will they see a performance?
Yeah, so there will be opportunities to view performances. I don't know about the Jazz History Museum. I'm sure there's music recordings left and right there, but I do know that if we are at Preservation Hall, they bring in live jazz musicians, as well as on our dinner cruise, there's live jazz bands there too. So they do get that opportunity to witness performance.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Further questions, or board members? I'd like to thank you for proposing this and enriching our students' opportunities. Once again, I hope many students take advantage of this and are able to take advantage of it, obviously, and just enrich their love of music and broaden their education. I think it's really great. So, any last comments? So we have a motion for approval of the Faribault High School Music Department field trip to New Orleans, March 23rd through 27th. I looked that up. There we go. So all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Item 10C, consider approval of the agreement between Independent School District 656 and Independent School District 829. Mr. Gunderson,
He had to leave.
he was here, but I know he told me he had 4 different places he needed to be at.
He had to go to open a door at Bruce Smith Field. He said he'll be back soon.
Okay. So let's just continue. We can go through this, I believe, here. So let's have a motion for approval of the agreement between Independent School District 656 and Independent School District 829. I'll make the motion for that, and do we have a second?
Second.
I'll take Mr. Wolf's second. And discussion. So I'll do the best we can here, and board members chime in, but in the agreement, in your preparation here, you see this is agreement between Faribault Public School District and Independent School District 829 of Waseca. It is, I believe it's for hockey. Is it strictly just girls hockey?
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is your standard contract between two schools to share ice time and resources for girls hockey in a co-op. So this is simply looking to form a co-op with Waseca so that we can have girls ice hockey this year.
Very good.
Everything is spelled out in there based on the financial support from both districts. Who will cover what, the referees, the registration, equipment, ice rental. Everything is spelled out in there for how it will be financially supported.
Further discussion? Further discussion? I think, just my comment here, I think as we see the next agenda item as well, I think it's great how we're reaching out, or other districts are reaching out to us and forming co-ops, et cetera, so we can have because we have our activities here and for our kids that are in this district. I think it's a very, very positive thing.
And Mr. Chair, I just want to mention too, as long as you said that, I think it's important that students, if they want to, be in a sport or whatever, that it's important that I think this is an important opportunity for them, because sometimes if they didn't have these cooperatives, they may be not able to participate in any of the sports that they wish. So I think this is a good idea.
Great point. And as a reminder, board members, not every district wants to cooperate or form a cooperative or will form a cooperative with other districts as well. So in the best interest of students, this is good, I think. Any further discussion? We have a motion for approval of the agreement between Independent School District 656 and Independent School District 829. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 10D, consider approval of applications for dissolution of cooperative sponsorships and applications for cooperative sponsorship. So in this agenda item, board members, we have two things. I see we are dissolving a co-op and then reestablishing a co-op. Mr. Benty, am I correct on that?
Yes, so you're not, by Minnesota State High School League rules, you're not allowed to have two co-ops in place.
Right.
So for us to add one team, in this case, it would be Waseca. This is actually a new co-op for us all together. So you'll see it's Waseca, Faribault, NRHEG, and WEM. But we need to dissolve the co-op before we create a new one.
Mr. Benty, I believe also JWP, Randolph, Medford, and BA as well for girls hockey. There's actually a second page. So there's 8 schools for girls hockey.
There we go. You're right. JWP, Randolph, Medford, and BA. Correct.
So with that, Ms. Kenny, did I get a motion for approval in a second?
No.
Okay, I was thinking the other one. So with that, before we get into too deep a discussion, let's have a motion for approval of the dissolution of cooperative sponsorships and applications for a cooperative sponsorship.
Moved.
Thank you, Ms. Boudreau, and do we have a second?
Second.
Ms. Steves, I'll take Ms. Steves. Okay, discussion, other than what's already been said.
Mr. Bellingham, I believe the only difference on soccer is we're actually adding MSAD as a partner, if you will.
That is correct.
And I know Mr. Gunderson's not here. Mr. Benty, do you know, with regards to girls hockey, it looks like we are the only Class 2A school out of the 7. So will we be a 2A team or a single A team?
Yeah, so none of this will move us in any of our
Okay.
different classes, is what I was told.
Okay,
So
thank you.
Further discussion? It's a very unique co-op with girls hockey of 8 different schools.
Kudos to the transportation director.
That's okay. Yes, very much so. Any further discussion on agenda item Been moved and seconded. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 10E, consider approving revisions to the Administrative Assistant Employment Agreement for 2024-2026. Action item. I'll entertain a motion for approval of the Administrative Assistant Employee Agreement.
So move.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf, and do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Robichaux. And Ms. Yocum, would you like to come up and present this, please?
Hi, good evening. I don't know if you saw this, but I was giving Rob a look when I walked up here because he was my partner in crime during our negotiation sessions, and he opted not to come up here. So
Mr.
thank you,
Daynard,
Rob.
if you would come up as well, please. Thank you for the cue, Ms. Yocum.
Thank you for your help, Rob. I appreciate it. Okay, so good evening again. We have 29 employees in this group of employees here with our district. And so we had several meetings with them. Some of them were virtual, some of them were in person, but all really good meetings. We had some good conversations with this group of employees. What we landed on is to increase their salary in year one by 5.7%, to increase their 403B match by $110 per year in year one, to modify their longevity language, which will help, we think will help with some retention. And then also we have a natural roll-up cost of health insurance for all of these folks that are on a single plan, because our health insurance this past July 1st did increase by 5%, so that is factored into this. We did increase their HSA and their VEBA contributions by $200 a year. And then we added Juneteenth as a paid holiday for the appropriate people that work around that time. And then we also revised their vacation schedule as well. In year two, we made just a few changes. The first one was an increase to their salary in the amount of 2.35%, which would be effective July 1st of 25. And then we also assumed the same health insurance increase would go into place on July 1st of 25 as well. So we factored in a 5% natural roll-up cost for single insurance plans. And those were the only two things. So it gave us a total two-year total package increase of $184,383.
Thank you. Board members, discussion.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Boudreau.
just maybe should clarify this was within our parameter, or is this within our parameter of what we had set in place prior?
Yes, thank you. It was within our budgeted parameters.
Thank you.
Further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I need to abstain from this vote.
Yes, thank you. Noted. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Olson?
what do we have budgeted for this? What was the budget amount?
So we based our budget on a dollar amount that was just right around, I don't remember the actual dollar amount, but it was right around the $184,000 over 2 years. But the complicated piece is in year one, there's not actually, or excuse me, in year two, there's not actually a budget built because we don't go out 2 years with our budget, so we really only have a budget for year one. But using our parameters, we were within that $184,000 amount that was given to us.
Do we have a 4% for the first year? We went above that, right?
So in year one, it's over and above the 4% that's in the budget, and then in year two, it's less than that. So we look at it as a 2-year contract.
So you're front-loading this, basically.
Yeah, you could say that. The changes become, pretty much the majority of the changes become effective in year one.
Mr. Olson, anything else?
Oh, that's it.
Okay, thank
That's
you.
it, sir.
Any other questions, any other discussion, board members? Last call. We are ready to vote. All in favor of the motion for approving revisions to the Administrative Assistant Employment Agreement for 2024 to 2026, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion passes 6-1. Thank you. 10F, consider approval of the 12-month Healthy Community Initiative Professional Services Agreement. Mr. Pruitt, you're on deck here for the next few ones here, so if you would come up. And while he's coming up, let's have a motion for approval of the 12-month Healthy Community Initiative Professional Services Agreement.
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Robichaux. Do I have a second? And second, Ms. Steves. And so, Mr. Pruitt, I'll have you give an overview quick here.
Sure. The next two items relate to partnerships with the Healthy Community Initiative to reflect grant contracts that each of the entities have to be able to support work in the community. The first one is funding that will be coming to the school district from grants that HCI helped to write to be able to support a variety of after-school programs, swimming lessons, early childhood programs, and a variety of other resources that folks can see. We did it this way so that it was sort of one contract coming to the board instead of having to repeatedly come back. So just in a name of efficiency, brought these all together under one agreement, and so that we had them for auditing and other purposes.
Thank you. Discussion?
Okay, Mr. Chair?
Ms. Moore?
Yeah, it's under, I think, Appendix D. It talks, I guess I need to know what is the out-of-school program that they talk about? What is exactly?
Yeah, so we run what had been called Community School Program and now is known as Falcons Beyond, as well as the Summer STEAM program during the summer. And these grants help to support a variety of costs, whether from staffing to transportation to supplies for those programs, which are free and kind of open across all of our buildings.
It talks about humanities, that the workshops in art and the humanities. Humanities is a very broad area. What exactly will they be working on?
The funding is from the Minnesota Department of Humanities, and so that's a grant to be able to support a variety of art activities, other sort of enrichment opportunities for students.
How is this going to improve achievement scores? Because our achievement scores are pretty low.
I mean, I think there's pretty strong research out there that shows the importance of out-of-school time programming to help kids and families feel connected to the schools. Our out-of-school time programs also include academic components to help support students. Most of our goals are related to academic performance, and so this is one of the strategies. Certainly not a strategy alone that will reach those, but I think it's an important part of a multi-pronged approach by the district to support student success.
Mr. Pruitt and Mr. Benty, if you would clarify here, so these grants that are received for the Healthy Community Initiative are grants that are run through the district for our partners, that our partners receive within our community. Am I correct on that?
That is correct. It is a grant that HCI has received, and we need to approve our piece of
It funds
working
our
with them.
programming in our district, so it's fun to support the work that we're doing and provide some additional resources to that so that we're not having to tap sort of other district resources in order to be able to do that.
Very good. And as a side note, what Ms. Boudreau said earlier, this agenda item was approved by the Finance Committee here in September, just a week ago. So we're with that. Further discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Olson?
Zach, just in general, how many programs are we applying for? And it seems like we're loading up. If there's money there, we grab it. But do we need all these programs, these grants, or what?
I would pretty strongly disagree with that assertion that we're grabbing money just to grab it. I think we go through a pretty extensive process to vet grants to make sure that they fit with the mission of the district and serve the needs of our students and families. Work with Mr. Benty often on evaluating grants. We don't apply for all the grants that we could. We leave some, choose not to apply for some. So I don't think that, I would strongly disagree with that statement that we're grabbing money just to grab money.
Well, I'll disagree with you on that.
Okay.
Just to follow up on Ms. Moore's rationale and questioning, so my two children attended the summer STEAM program. My oldest has attended since kindergarten. This is the jam. This is what helped him, progress rapidly back after and during COVID to get on level with both math and reading. It's a free service. They don't even know that they're learning. It's a great, great program. So encouraging us to continue this program, but also really encouraging parents to participate in this program. It's a great thing, so keep it up.
Thanks, Kim.
So just for clarification, so it's not just STEAM, we have other programs.
Yep, I was just talking in
Yeah, okay.
one line item.
Yeah, we run a very similar program to STEAM as an after-school programming in each of our elementary schools, plus our middle school and high school. So yes, it's a continuation with the same staff, and so the goal is to make it a year-round program to be able to serve the needs of students and families.
Last call for discussion.
Mr. Pruitt, I just want to thank you and HCI and everybody else that works on this. I just, the more stuff in the summer, the more stuff after school, I just don't understand how that could be a bad thing for our students. And so just a big thank you.
Dr. Robichaud.
Mr. Chair, just a comment. If you take a look at the title, it's Healthy Community Initiative, and we are a significant partner in this community. And to be able to work with other organizations in this community to create a healthy community, you're to be commended for the work that you're doing, Mr. Pruitt. Thank you.
Any further discussion? We have a motion for approval of the 12-month Healthy Community Initiative Professional Services Agreement. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No,
Motion passes 5-2. 10G, consider approval of the 14-month Healthy Community Initiative Professional Services Agreement beginning July 1st, 2024. Motion for approval of the 14-month HCI Professional Services Agreement.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Dr. Robichaud, second by Mr. Wolf, and discussion. Anything you need to add with this one other than it's 14-month?
And these are grants that we have that we are contracting with HCI to provide services to prevent where they have, or areas where they have expertise, and it allows us to most efficiently be able to access those resources without having to bring on additional staff within the district.
Thank you. Discussion?
yes, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Moore.
It talks about the health areas. Can you be specific? What health areas are we talking about? That was on Appendix D.
Appendix which?
Appendix D, it talks about the health areas. What health areas are we looking at specifically?
Yeah, we're exploring school-based health services, including we partner on dental care to be able to provide dental clinics. We most recently partnered on sports physicals to be able to make sure kids can take part in sports activities. We're just underway to explore how we can expand vision services, because we know some of our students aren't able to access other vision services, so we're working to explore those. Those are the current 3 that are kind of leading that work right now.
And there'll be more following, I'm guessing?
Those are the 3 that we're looking at right now.
Okay. I noticed that they're data tracking. What data specifically are you tracking?
So for many of the grants, we have to track participation data to be able to
Pardon?
report participation data to be able to share back the number of students that are participating in our programs. So that is probably the largest.
Okay. Where is that going then? Is it going up to the Minnesota Department of Health then, or?
Most of it
The
is.
data.
Most of our grants are through the Minnesota Department of Education,
So the data is going up there then?
and it's typically reported in the aggregate
Yeah.
most often.
It's an aggregate, so it's
Typically.
not with, okay,
No, it's not.
all right. All right,
Any further discussion?
that's,
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Olson?
Zach, where's the parents or / guardian involved in this? You're talking about the health of a child. Where's the responsibility of the parent in this? Instead of the schools taking responsibility.
So for dental care and for sports physicals, parents are involved in completing the forms to be able to access. We're making them available to students and families because they may not have access to other health services. So by offering them in the schools, we're able to expand access to them. So parents are involved. They're the ones completing the forms. Parents are often attending the sports physicals with their child.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Boudreau?
so, Mr. Pruitt, are you saying that parents are seeking these services? They're integrally involved in the children getting the services?
Certainly with, with dental
Okay.
care,
Yes.
sports physicals, and I'd imagine with vision too.
Yes. And as the data we talked about earlier, when you said it's aggregated data, that means it's not identifiable.
Correct.
Thank you.
Last call for discussion. We have a motion for approval of the 14-month Healthy Community Initiative Professional Services Agreement beginning July 1, 2024. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
Motion passes 5-2. 10H, consider approval of the 18-month Riverbend Nature Center Professional Services Agreement beginning July 1, 2024. Motion for approval of that agenda item.
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Robichaud. And a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Discussion.
Yeah, we're really fortunate to be able to partner with the Riverbend Nature Center. They're a tremendous resource in this community. They've received some funding from the state of Minnesota to be able to expand career pathway options for adults in natural resource management and conservation. The state recommended that we be listed as a funded partner in this work because of the strong standing that we have with the state and the strong financial systems that we have in place. And so this provides essentially $100,000 to the district to support our partnership with Riverbend Nature Center to around those adult pathway work. So we're excited about the opportunity that will provide to adult basic education as well as to the district as a whole.
Thank you, Mr. Pruitt. As community members, all of us here, we are just so fortunate to have Riverbend, and it's not just walk around the nature center, but the education they provide, the training, like you said, career pathways, et cetera, just huge and very, very important. So again, thank you for facilitating this grant as well. So any further discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Boudreau.
this came through our finance committee.
Sorry.
And I've got a little more information. It was a deed grant, and it's a substantial grant, and it does provide someone to help with organizing, and they're called an organizational mentor.
Correct.
So I think it's a pretty good find for us to help our students can rely on a very good organization at Riverbend Nature Center to utilize for their school activities. Thank you for finding it.
Further discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Ms.
Yes,
Moore.
I think it's always a good idea, I think, for students to get out in nature. And anytime they can do that, I think it's great. So I appreciate that opportunity for the students.
Further discussion? We have a motion for approval of the 18-month Riverbend Nature Center Professional Services Agreement. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 10I, consider approval of the 24-month Riverbend Nature Center Professional Services Agreement beginning September 1, 2024. Motion for approval of the 24-month Riverbend Nature Center Professional Services Agreement.
Move.
Thank you, Ms. Boudreau. And a second?
Second.
I'll take Ms. Steves as a second. As a side note, as Ms. Boudreau reminds me, this also was agreed upon or approved by the Finance Committee with details. And Mr. Pruitt, anything to add with the 24-month?
No, just that this would provide the opportunity for students in our after-school and summer programs to be able to go to Riverbend on field trips over the next 2 years, as well as for Riverbend to come into those after-school and summer programs to lead workshops for kids. So it's a great partnership, and we're really lucky to be able to work with Riverbend.
So we are. Excellent, excellent. Further discussion? Last call for discussion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Mr. Pruitt, thank you for your work. You are really commended for everything you do for our district and our kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach.
10J, consider approval of the preliminary 24 pay 25 property tax levy. Barbie Ressler, if you would come forward, please, to present. So how about a motion for approval of the preliminary 24 pay 25 property tax levy, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Robichaud. And do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. And discussion. So we did discuss this in Finance Committee, and because numbers were changing from the Department of Education, Mr. Benty, explain to us.
Mr. Chair. So since Barbie was not on board yet, today is actually her first day full-time with us. So the Finance Committee did see this, and there was a grossly inflated number that was on there, like high 30% increase, which we knew was incorrect, but we didn't know exactly where that was from. So during that meeting, we discussed about that I would look into it. We've contacted the Minnesota Department of Education. There were errors. I'll let Barbie talk about those and what is coming. We still don't have all of the information that we need to have a number, though. So
With that, I'll turn it over to you, Barbie.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Looking at the levy report that is provided by the Minnesota Department of Education, it was very obvious that there was something incorrect with the amounts that we were given. The adjusted pupil unit rate per pupil unit, the Minnesota Department of Education's number was inflated by $733.62 per adjusted pupil unit. And so that, of course, is going to inflate the amount then that we have authorized versus what was calculated. I did check the levy report. This 40-page document is provided on a daily basis right now from the Minnesota Department of Education, and I did look to see what that amount was today at 5:15, and they still have not updated it yet. There is a new run out there, but our levy authorized operating referendum per pupil unit is still not correct. So I've been in touch with MDE. I've been in touch with the folks that actually provide this data, and they are working on correcting it. It's actually a threefold process that they need to correct. And also in the meantime, we were able to get better figures entered for other areas of the levy report for community education, as an example, as well as debt service. So I'm feeling really confident in community ed and in debt service. MDE still has to make a correction for us, and this finalized data does need to be in by September 30th, and so I know that they'll be working on it to get that corrected. What I'm guesstimating our levy increase to be, if you will, is actually less than zero. So at this time, I am feeling pretty good that our community is going to be pretty happy with us in that there will not be a large increase or perhaps not any increase. However, I do not have those finalized numbers from the Department of Education, but based on the calculations that I've run, that's what we're looking at. So the recommendation for tonight is to approve the levy at the maximum. And that's what over 90% of school districts do at their September meeting, is that they approve the maximum, because that allows them the opportunity to under levy if they want. Most districts do not under levy because that will bite you in years coming forward. But it is an option for a school district if they would like to under levy in some area. If we set an actual dollar amount at tonight's meeting, then our hands are tied and we cannot increase or decrease amounts. So the recommendation is to approve the maximum. When we do the Truth and Taxation meeting on December 2nd, and I will then present the finalized levy, and that is when it's actually approved. as final. So what you're doing tonight with a motion is basically setting a preliminary amount at maximum.
Thank you. And again, it's a preliminary amount, and
Correct.
we approve the amount in the Truth and Taxation, I believe that's in December
December 2nd.
December
Yes.
2nd meeting, okay?
Yes.
And my understanding of this is the district isn't receiving any more money.
No.
By this, it's a shift in from state to local or shifting around, correct?
What this is this, so the levy that we're approving is the 24 pay 25 levy for revenue that we will receive in fiscal year 26. So what happens is you approve this particular levy in December of 2024. Taxes are then collected from community members in 2025 calendar year, and then we receive the revenue in fiscal year 2026. So we are not receiving anything on this particular report or funding mechanism at this time.
And would you repeat that again? Did you say estimating less than zero?
Yeah, that's, so give or take, because I'm not a fortune teller yet, but that is, that's the best guesstimate that I have at this time.
Long way from 30%.
Yes, yes, it is.
Discussion.
Mr.
Mr. Wolf.
Bellingham, a couple of questions, couple of comments. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yes.
Glad, what a great first day to get up here in front of us and make a prediction. I hope you're somewhat correct on that. Number two, will you pronounce your last name for us?
Raisler,
Raisler.
long
Okay.
A, yep.
Raisler, okay, perfect, thank you. Now,
Yep.
now we're all on the same page. Nope, that's all, thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Ms. Boudreau.
I'm just very relieved that we have Ms. Raisler here tonight, and she can ensure us that we are not, the figures we had at our finance meeting were a little scary to me. It's like, this can't be right. We got to talk about this at the meeting, and would you agree it was a very big difference than what we anticipated?
Huge, it's 2.5 million. So yes,
That
it was
we
a
would
huge,
be-
huge difference.
Yeah.
Yes.
That would have need to be raised.
Yes.
Not happening, not happening.
Nope, nope.
So thank you and welcome.
Mr. Olson needs something first. Go ahead.
Yeah, Barbie, your name Barbie or Barbara to be official? What would you like to be called?
Barbie is fine.
Okay. What's the maximum amount that we're going to set?
So it's not a dollar value. It's not a particular value. What it is we're saying in each of the different levy categories that we're able to levy on, we want the highest amount possible. That allows us room to make changes if we want to. If we set a dollar amount tonight, then our hands are tied. We cannot make any changes. We're stuck with that number. And that number may fluctuate up or down in different categories.
Are we taking a risk it's not your fault, it's the Department of Ed. Are we taking a risk? We don't have all the data, we can't make a decision.
No, you're not taking a risk tonight because you're giving approval for a blanket amount. So what we do then is we just say maximum, and then we're allowed to make adjustments as needed. And then in December, that's when you'll approve the actual amount.
Doesn't that open the, we go maximum, does that?
No, it does. There's no harm in saying maximum.
It does not lock the district into the maximum. It just means that it allows us to go to the maximum if we choose to in December at the Truth and Taxation meeting.
Mr. Olson, I'm kind of along your lines in that it's wonky, if you will. There's not a set amount. This is my 10th year on the board, and every September we get here and we approve the maximum. At least in the previous 9 years, we've approved the maximum. However, we've had a more formalized document in front of us because the
Yes.
numbers have been accurate. And then we get to the Truth and Taxation in December, and we have in my previous 9 years, we've always stuck with that exact same number. Not everybody has always agreed to it, but the board has always voted in favor of that. So I hear what you're saying, and I understand what you're saying. I also understand that this has to be done by the end of the month.
Yes.
Is that right? At least
Yes, September 30th.
some amount has to be approved at a ceiling, right? And so we're saying the maximum in this
Correct.
case.
Correct.
And we'll have more formalized numbers. And Mr. Olson, to your, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but if Ms. Raisler was really incorrect, and maybe the numbers that she's seeing are still incorrect, and I'm just total hypothetical here, I don't want to alarm anybody, it came in higher than what she projected, then we could have that discussion, and do we want to go with that number, or don't we want to go with that number?
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Dr. Robichaud.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question. You're recommending that we identify the maximum, which I understand.
Yeah.
You can't go beyond that after
Correct.
we set that.
Correct.
But the maximum isn't zero. What percentage are you recommending is the maximum based on your history and background?
So literally looking at the numbers, our levy is looking that it will go down. So we're going down in community ed because we have more grants and we don't have to levy as much. Also because the 2023 legislative session purposefully granted more aid than levy in many of their areas. So that's going down, our debt's going down, the amount that we have to levy to our taxpayers, that amount is also going down. And what I'm seeing for the operating referendum and then all of the categoricals, such as operating capital, long-term facilities maintenance, declining enrollment, all of those different areas, there is a slight decrease overall. Not in each one specifically, but overall. So at this point in time, it does look like we will not have an increase.
My question, Mr. Chair, follow-up is tomorrow's headlines in the Daily News would be school district set zero as a levy maximum.
No.
And that's so is there a percentage that you are recommending as a maximum that we set tonight, knowing that that's not etched in stone, that'll be modified in December at the Truth and Taxation?
We're not looking at a number tonight, because we haven't received any of the correct information back from the state yet. So, through our calculations today, it was a negative number that we were forecasting. I would prefer not to lock us into that here.
Well, we're not locked in because we adjusted at the Truth and Taxation hearing.
Yeah,
But
we can only
go down.
we can only adjust
I
if
know,
we
go
approve the
down, I know.
maximum. So
But what is that, you're not saying or recommending any kind of figure tonight as a maximum?
I don't think we have the data to recommend
Shouldn't be.
a figure for maximum.
So I think, I could be wrong here, Mr. Chair and Mr. Benti, but either we approve this tonight or we schedule a special session to come back for this item when you get more information, and that has to be done by September 30th. Is that correct?
Correct.
Week from today.
Mr. Chair, will this, the idea, with Jerry is that it could read, school board approved the maximum. People don't understand the finances and say, what's going on? Does it have to be in their office by the 30th?
Yes.
So if we
And
have
we
a
have to
board
have-
meeting, a special board meeting the 30th, would that be too late?
No.
So we could have a meeting a week from today.
Yes, but you're still going to approve the maximum. So the language doesn't change as far as what you're approving for a preliminary. It would still be the maximum. And trying to figure out what is that maximum tonight, I'm comfortable saying it's probably going to be around zero.
Of course, as a
That is
board,
the-
we don't go with probably. That's
Correct, because I can't give you an absolute because I don't have the data.
Yeah,
from-
it's not
Yeah.
yours, it's the state,
Correct.
which I've never heard of this, that we're supposed to get this data and you're not, or we're not you, but we can't talk about, we can't do anything.
And even if we have a special meeting, we're still gonna approve the maximum. That's still gonna be the wording. That's still gonna be the certification that we provide to MDE.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Boudreau?
I'm very comfortable voting for the maximum tonight. That just gives us the opportunity to garner what we don't know is
Correct.
available for us to get. And it sounds
Correct.
like what is available for us to get through our levy is not going to be coming an increase.
Correct.
But just to ensure we get the maximum, whether it's minus 1% or plus 0.5%, we have to vote tonight. And I am very comfortable with that. I'm thankful you clarified the error that we looked at in the Finance Committee. That was the only thing I needed clarity on. We're going with procedure that you've done and we've done in the past, and I think all members can feel comfortable just voting for the maximum levy today.
Thank you, Ms. Boudreau. Further discussion, board members?
Mr. Chair?
Ms.
Yeah,
Moore?
I agree with Ms. Bidrow on that.
Further discussion? We have a motion for approval of the preliminary 24, pay 25 property tax levy, and I'll include at the maximum. Okay. Last call for discussion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion passes 6-1.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Olson?
Yeah, side issue. Could Barbie explain to her history or, introduce herself to the board? Would that be proper, Mr. Chair, at this time?
Mr. Benty introduced her, but
But-
I guess if you would like to, I'll be flexible and go with that. Go ahead, Barbie.
Okay. I worked about 25 years at Region 5 Computer Services, and we assist school districts in finance and payroll and actually provide the software that the majority of school districts in Minnesota use. The Region 5 area covers from Wisconsin, Iowa, all the way west to Comfrey, if you're familiar with them, and into the South Twin Cities area. So I've dealt with, we had 77 public school districts and 125 charter schools that we worked with. So I got to see a lot of different public school districts and how each one of them work a little bit differently. Had the opportunity then to work for Ellers, who is actually your municipal advisor and does your bonds and those kinds of things. So I worked for them for a short time. Then I went to the Fridley Public Schools District up in the cities where I was the Director of Finance and Operations. However, I live in southern Minnesota, so that was kind of a trek. So then there was a position in New Ulm that opened up for a business manager, and so I took that position. I had actually applied here. This is my second go-around trying to get in here, so I'm very excited to be here.
Nice.
So, thank you.
Very
Okay,
good.
well, thank you. Thank you for the information.
Agenda item 10K.
Welcome. We're glad to have you.
Agenda item number 10K, consider approval of resolution 24-05 authorizing petty cash. Do we have a motion for approval of resolution 25-05?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Olson,
Second.
and second by Ms. Boudreau. I don't believe I have to read the resolution at all, board members, okay? All right, discussion. Mr. Benty, you wish to explain this?
Just two different pieces with this. One, we needed to update to get Barbie's name on here, and second, we needed to increase the amount of petty cash in that office by $11 because one of the payments that has to go out was $241 versus $230. So we just wanted to be as transparent as we could with our petty cash.
Excellent. Further discussion? Discussion? We have a motion for approval of Resolution 25-05, authorizing petty cash. This is a roll call item. Ms. Steves, please.
Linda Boudreau,
Aye.
Linda Moore,
Aye.
Richard Olson,
Aye.
Jared Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you, Ms. Steves. Agenda item 10L, consider approval of fiscal year 24-25 6/5 EL overload contract. Motion for approval.
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Do I have a second? Ms. Boudreau. Discussion? Mr. Benty, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, so this is in the amount of roughly $12,000. It comes off of the heels of us reducing a EL teacher at the middle school. We have had an increase in our newcomer students, so we need a little bit more FTE. We don't need a full FTE, but we need just an overload to be able to cover some of the needs for that building.
Very good. And this agenda item was approved by the Finance Committee there, and so just wish to inform you of that. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, this is a good bargain for the district. We have a person that's willing to work overtime. We don't have to hire a new person. Thank you to that person that's willing to work overtime.
Good. Thank you, Ms. Boudreau. Any further discussion? Discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 10M, consider approval of fiscal year 24-25 school resource officer agreement. Could I have a motion for approval of the fiscal year 24-25 school resource officer agreement?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Boudreau. And Ms. Steves with the second. Discussion, Mr. Benty.
Yes, so the dollar amount was approved by, I believe, the board and the Finance Committee back in August. This is simply the contract, the language that goes with that dollar amount, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Olson.
What's your general feeling? Well, of course, I'll vote for it, but again, statewide, after George Floyd, some schools said, basically get our police out of the schools. I mean, what's the general consensus out there, with your superintendents that you've talked to?
So I can't speak for other districts and their views of school resource officers in their buildings. I know the Big Nine conference that we're in here in southeast Minnesota strongly supported retaining our school resource officers, and Faribault was no different than that. We kept ours through the entire time. So,
Thank you.
Any further discussion? We have a motion for approval of the fiscal year 24-25 school resource officers agreement. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 10N, consider moving the regular business meeting scheduled for October 21st, 2024 to October 28th, 2024. Could I have a motion for approval of moving the regular business meeting from October 21st, 2024 to October 28th, 2024?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Boudreau. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Overshaw. And discussion, I'll take this one. In discussion with Mr. Benty, he is out of town. I believe you're at a conference or something, very important conference on the 21st. We could have the board meeting here with him virtual. However, I do know that one of the agenda items will be the reorganization piece, and it is very, very important that Mr. Benty's I'm going to say the main cog or the main wheel behind this. So that's my rationale for moving it to the 28th. There. Discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Wolf.
are you anticipating that being just further update on the reorg, or are you anticipating a vote that night?
Just discussion and things on I do not anticipate a vote. I was going to explain that when we get to the reorganization update, but I don't anticipate a vote till November.
Okay, thank you. I believe I'm out of town on the 28th and unable to join, and I don't know that I'll have a public place identified 72 hours in advance. So.
Right, thank you. Further discussion?
Local bar.
Further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, board members. 10O, reorganization update. Before we begin this, board members, would you be satisfied with a 5 to 10 minute break here? I'm seeing nods of heads, so I issue let's have a 10-minute recess. So we will begin again at 7:25. That's 11 minutes, but 7:25. We are in recess. Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order, please. Thank you all. So agenda item 10O is the reorganization update. It's a presentation. So before I turn it over to Mr. Benty, just a couple of things from my chair here. One is we'll have Mr. Benty go through his entire presentation here. At the end, we'll take some questions. Whatever. And then to get the big picture here in my vision, we will use the October work session for review and discussion of these options, and also the October 28th business meeting for review and discussion. And when I'm talking about review and discussion, Ms. Steves and I are working on a rubric of how we can piece together these options here and analyze them as thoroughly and vet them as thoroughly as possible, and then by ranking them in a rubric or whatever system we come up with here, finalize that. It takes the emotion, it gives us more data, more facts, things like that. It takes the emotion out of it, et cetera, like that. So keeping in mind at the end, when Mr. Benty's done presenting, is the questions you ask or whatever, and I will ask you any questions that you think of or information coming from the board, I guess the community, et cetera, the input, that information comes to those questions and information come to myself and Mr. Benty. I will distribute them to the entire board, and each question and theories that are presented or whatever will be discussed at the next work session like that. So any clarity needed on any of that before I turn it over to Mr. Benty? Okay, guess not. So Mr. Benty, the reorganization presentation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this presentation has been a long time coming. I know the district has toyed around with the idea of reorganization for quite a few years now. Took a strong look at it last school year, which was just back in January, February of this year. So this has been a kind of a combination of a lot of different work. One of the pieces that the board looked at when it looked at this in January and February was around what the community had to say, or was there a community committee that looked at this? And the answer to that was no. So this time there was a community committee that was put together. There were over 20 participants from whether they be parents, whether they be teachers, whether they be just people in the community that don't have children in school anymore. We held 7 meetings from June through the end of August. And came up with different ideas. So one of the pieces that we did was that the committee spent a lot of time just learning about what some of the past items that have been brought up around reorganizations, what is capable in the district and what is not capable in the district, what our facilities truly look like. We took a tour of 6 different sites. So we toured the current ALC building, McKinley, Early Childhood Center, and Roosevelt on one evening, and we toured Lincoln, Jefferson, and the middle school on another evening. Just to give people the opportunity to see those, to physically see those sites and see what they look like. And then the 5 proposals were brought to the committee to rank. At that time, the committee wished to look at a 6th proposal, so I went back, put that proposal together, sent then 6 proposals out, or options I should say, out to the committee, and they ranked those 6, and those rankings are part of this as well. So the objective of this committee is up here. The primary objective of this reorganization plan is to optimize educational outcomes, operational efficiency, and cost effectiveness for Faribault Public Schools. This involves addressing current facility limitations, ensuring a smooth transition for students across grade levels, and aligning resources to support student needs. Right. This plan will provide multiple options for grade reconfiguration, each with detailed impacts, and culminate in a final recommendation based on a comprehensive evaluation of all factors. Some background information, our historic enrollment and projected enrollment. You can see so in the past, and I'm going to use this, so Dr. Moore and Dr. Robichaud, I sincerely apologize if I hit you in the eye with this, okay, this laser. So last year we were
If you
right.
do, we won't see you anyway.
Last year we were right here, and these are last year's numbers. We have not updated this. So last year when we talked about this, we were the blue. We are now the orange. And Barbie, I believe the number we talked about today was like 3150-ish. So I can't see the number that's on there, but that number would represent 3150-ish. We're still getting a complete count. The good news is that we appear to be a little bit higher than what we thought we were going to be. So that's a good sign. And we're still projecting this leveling off, okay? Remember that I discussed that the declining birth rate still exists. There was no COVID baby boom like some people had projected. So when people say, why is our enrollment declining? A lot of our declining enrollment that we see coming to us now is honestly just babies are not being born. And we see that not only across Faribault, we see that across Minnesota, we see that across the United States, we see that across the world. It's a worldwide epidemic that there's simply not enough children being born. Our current district structure is 7 buildings. McKinley is our early childhood center. Roosevelt is our preschool through and K-5 building. Lincoln is a K-5 building. Jefferson has preschool as well as a K-5 building. Our middle school serves grades 6 through 8. Our area learning center is a 9-12 center, and our high school is 9-12. Some pieces to look at are to take into consideration as we move through this is that our current ALC building site is worth about $933,000. Now that was as of February of 2024. We have not looked this up since. That broke down as 5.1 acres of land. The tax value of the land was about $145,000, and the tax value of the building was about $788,000. At that time, and currently that building is overdue for $2.3 million. Once again, old number from January, February, in HVAC plus other required upgrades at additional costs. Right? It needs a significant security upgrade. It does not have a secured entrance to it. It is not centrally located. It does not have access to a kitchen to be comparable with a site that we do have, which is the McKinley site. And it also does not have access to a gym, indoor gym, to be comparable with, once again, the McKinley site. Our McKinley site, building considerations, the site is worth, once again, $1.98 million. Those are numbers from February. It is 6.8 acres of land. The land is valued at $242,000, and the building is at $1.74 million. It is also due for about $2.3 million in HVAC and other capital upgrades over the next few years, but it is not overdue like the ALC is. The ALC is, I would say, considerably overdue. I remember being on facilities committees 8 years ago, and we were talking about that it was due or overdue at that time. It does have a secured entrance. It does have a kitchen. It does have a gym. All right, and we currently have a wait list for our pre-K programming. So that building, it is not big enough for the program that we could put in it. Now, I do caution the board when I say that it would mean investing more money in personnel to run those classrooms, but the need is there and the desire is there from the community, so. Are there any questions so far before we kind of move into any of the options? All right, coming up are the 6 options. There will be 3 slides per option. There's some comparison slides after that, and then you will see the ranking of the committee. And each option has a title as well as a letter that has been assigned to it. So option A is what is referred to as our status quo option. That means commonly referred to as the do nothing option. We simply consider we continue to do business and house our students the way that we have been. So there's no grade changes across any of our areas. The ALC building still becomes a strong question. I put not applicable up there for the proposed change simply because the board has stated that they do not intend to put more money in that site. But if we chose to do nothing, we would still have to decide what we're doing with our ALC building. If we do nothing, you can see the enrollment numbers. These enrollment numbers are updated as of early last week. So let's say Monday of last week. Okay, so they are the most recent numbers that we can bring. And then the capacity pieces over there, and treat those capacity numbers with just kind of you can argue one way or another on those, all right? Because those are old numbers that many times were put in place before the understanding of the space requirements for EL, special ed, and other programming. Option A, status quo considerations. You have public perception. People are familiar with it. It's what we've been doing for a long time here in Faribault. Commonly referred to as neighborhood schools. Although we used to have, I believe at one time, 6 neighborhood schools, and now we have 3. All right. So I would argue that whenever it was either, I believe, Garfield that closed down or Washington, that would have been kind of the final true understanding of neighborhood schools. Academic environment, the pre-K program is spread out across 3 different sites instead of 1. Some people will say that is a good thing. I choose to say that is not a good thing because that is one of our programs that has shown the most success and that we are looking to grow that program. And with that, we can't grow it with where it is and being spread out at this point. The ALC stays at the current site, which obviously, like I said, needs maintenance. Facility maintenance pieces are there, and it limits the space for early education. If we maintained the status quo, rolling this to next year now, all the budget pieces have been rolled to next year because that would be the budget that we would be looking at. At most, we would be able to reduce 1 classroom teacher and 1 elementary specialist. At this point, that is the most that I would be comfortable saying that we could reduce for a total savings of about $160,000. Option B is grade banding. So if you're not familiar with grade banding, what it is you take a building and you shove 2 or 3 grades in it, the entire grade in it. All right, so all first graders would be in one building together. They would not be split up over 2 or 3 buildings. All 5th graders would be in one building together. Okay, so in this option, grade banding, Roosevelt would be a pre-K through kindergarten site. Right, so all pre-K, all kindergarten would be at Roosevelt. Jefferson would house all students in grades 1 and 2. Lincoln would house all students in grades 3 through 5. The middle school would stay 6 through 8. The high school would stay 9 through 12. The ALC would be able to close, and then we would be able to move the ALC to the McKinley site. Enrollment numbers are up there. they add up they're within 2 or 3 on each slide, just so you know. So if you add those up, they come out within 2 or 3, and that has to do with just some of the rounding pieces in a spreadsheet. So it's the same total number of students. They're just positioned throughout the district a little bit differently. Some of the considerations around grade banding is the efficiency in early education. You're going to see that pop up a couple different times because that's just with the pre-KK model, right? The focused academic environment, each elementary school focuses on specific grade bands. So if you were to go back and look at this, your Jefferson site would be able to solely dedicate itself to just first and second grade. Right, so they could really hone in on just what first and second grade needs. Likewise, Lincoln could do the same with third through fifth grade. Right? It dedicates an upgraded an ALC space at the McKinley site. All right, you have efficiencies of fewer buildings. There is an increase in transitions. Now, this, if you remember back to the late winter when we talked about this, one of the research pieces that was brought up was that one of the negative aspects of a student's education career is when they have to transition, when they have to move from building to building. Right? Now, with that being said, the other piece is stability. So research says moving from building to building, not so great for education, but stability in a child's life is good for education. The issue is that we have both here. Students are moving buildings every 2 or 3 years, but they are all moving together. So they have their same cohort that is moving from building to building. Which wins in that, we don't know. All right, but there's at least a plus and a minus based on research there. Logistical changes, this is one that I do have to be honest, I would have to have the transportation take a look at this. I'm not entirely sure how this would work for bus loops and for drop-offs, but I know that Faribault Transportation does an amazing job, and they would be able to figure this out for us. So if this is something that the board is seriously considering, then I will sit down with Faribault Transportation, and I will say, okay, what would this look like financially versus what we're doing now? To remind the board, we currently run a 1-tier busing route, which means we run one route. We don't run and pick up all high school and then run again or secondary and then run again and pick up all elementary. Some districts do that. They have a 2-tiered system where they make a run for their secondary and then they turn around and make a run for their elementary. We do not have that here in Faribault. Oh no. Nosco, are you able to adjust that so that we can see the bottom of that? Thank you. So this, if you can, there you go, perfect. There we go. Okay. So the grade, that's grade banding. Yep, that's the right one. Grade banding. So what you'll see is the possible, now all of a sudden these efficiencies start kicking in. And what you'll see is for the next 3 options, it is the exact same budget. Okay, there's no changes in the budget for the next 3 options. So what you're able to see is if we do the grade banding, we're able to reduce in many different areas: administration, teaching, clerical, custodial, and the operations area as well. All right, that total comes to $690,000. That is an ongoing, I should have said this for the last one, that is an ongoing cost savings to the district. So that is $690,000 year after year. Okay, likewise, the other one was $180,000 year after year. Okay. Option C is referred to as 5th grade to the middle school, all right, or 5th grade moves to the middle school. So what you see is that Roosevelt stays a pre-K through K site. Jefferson and Lincoln would both house grades 1 through 4. Faribault Middle School would house grades 5 through 8, adding 5th grade to the middle school. I preface that with saying that 5th grade would go to the middle school, but would stay under an elementary model as 5th graders there. All right, so they would stay with the same teacher. They would not be changing classes every hour like 6th, 7th, and 8th graders do. The high school would have no grade changes. The ALC would be able to close and move to the McKinley site. You see your enrollment and your capacities here. Considerations that you have, once again, that efficiency in the early education, the focus on an academic environment, what's referred to as the Ella Middle model, that 5th grade in the middle school, but in an elementary classroom model to ease that transition. Dedicated space, once again, for the ALC at McKinley. It improves the middle school transition. 5th graders get early exposure to middle school. That is research-based, so the idea is that the first year when they are 5th graders and they go there, the site changes, so the building changes, but the model that they're under stays the same. The next year as 6th graders, the model changes, but the building stays the same. Okay. Minimal renovations would be needed at Faribault Middle School to accommodate the 5th grade. All right, capacity issues, there are some. If you look back, it does really start to max out the middle school. Now, I know this says 900, but that 900 is a tight middle school, okay? And it's not even necessarily 900, belly buttons and desks. It's 900 students that you need to run through the cafeteria. It's 900 students that you need to get through your gyms. We think of it more like that, all right? So there is some capacity concerns. That is why I do have the middle school principal here tonight in case there's any questions that pop up around that. She is ready to at least take those questions down to bring back answers, all right? And then, of course, the public perception. When this was brought up back last November, this was very scary idea for the public, and we heard very loud and very clear and very quickly that the public was not interested in this. Once the committee, the community committee, learned more about this, they became much more open to this idea. So a lot of them said, I was very much against this. Once you explained it more in detail to me, it makes sense, and I would be in favor of it now. Option C, it is literally the exact same budget as option B, the same positions, same categories, same dollar amount down here at $690,000 ongoing. Option D is what is referred to as the previous plan option. This is the plan that was sent to the board back in January and February of this past year. This is that Roosevelt becomes a pre-K through K kindergarten center. Jefferson and Lincoln are grades 1 through 5. There's no changes at the middle school. There's no changes at the high school, and that the ALC would close this building and the program would move to the McKinley site. All right, enrollments are there for everyone to see. Option D, or previous plan considerations, once again, efficiency in the early education. The focused academic environment, all right, it is more of a traditional elementary model view, all right. Fewer transitions than grade banding, all right. It, once again, dedicated ALC space. The space considerations on this one is really what I think makes it a stronger contender than others. It allows for room for increased enrollment across the entire pre-K through 12th grade setting. So what I mean by that is when we go back, and that's why I left the capacity piece on here, because when you look at these numbers versus these numbers on each plan, when you look at enrollment versus capacity on each plan, what you'll see is that while some plans have really good numbers at some levels, their numbers at other levels become scary. And this is where I feel that it's necessary to explain that this is not, the committee was not looking for, nor am I looking for any type of Band-Aid or knee-jerk reaction when it comes to reorganization. We are looking 10 plus years out. All right, so with the option D plan, the previous plan, it does allow room for growth across all grade levels. Right, so it would give us plenty of time to be able to, if we need, we would have to have substantial enrollment growth to really outgrow that model. The public perception, it's more of a traditional understanding of the middle school with fifth grade at the elementary. This is one of the pieces, I'm just going to go on a bit of an editorial here. This is one of the pieces that I have really become more accustomed to understanding is the difference in views of what people understand as that middle level education. So for me, I went to a junior high school. It was grades 7 and 8. Right? Some people went to a junior high school that was grades 8 and 9. All right. Some people went to a middle school that was grades 6, 7, and 8. And some people have gone to a middle school that is grades 5, 6, 7, and 8. And all of those combinations exist all across the state of Minnesota as well as the nation. So those are all understood combinations that still exist in our world today. So, sometimes we look outside to see what is out there, but all of those combinations do exist, and people are successful with those combinations, okay? Option D is, once again, the exact same budget. Nothing changes in the positions, nothing changes in the categories or the amounts, and it is, once again, $690,000 efficiency savings to the district ongoing. Option E, ALC to middle school. All right. So in this scenario, or option I should say, Roosevelt is still a pre-K through kindergarten center. Jefferson and Lincoln are grades 1 through 5. The ALC building will close, but the ALC program will be housed at the middle school. Right? The high school will stay the same. That would allow us to close both the current ALC site and the McKinley site. Right? Effectively closing 2 buildings in our district. The piece with that is I do want you to take a look at your enrollment to capacities. I'll talk about that in a second. So some of the considerations, once again, that efficiency in early education stays there because we still have that pre-K and K center. All right. There's a focus on the academic environment. It allows for that traditional understanding of elementary model with grades 1 through 5 and less transitions in grade banding. All right, the ALC is in a shared space with FMS students. At the time that this was brought up a few years ago, this was not supported by the ALC staff, and it was not supported by the ALC students. All right, I felt the need to put that on there because that was heard by this board, well, not necessarily this board, but it was heard by some on this board loud and clear at board meetings. All right. Facility adjustments, significant renovations would need to take place at the middle school to accommodate ALC students. We would have to look at how we create a separate entrance. We would have to look at how we create some type of parking situation. We would have to look at how we do the best we can, and I'm going to use that as the term, do the best we can to physically separate ALC and middle school students with the understanding that there is only one lunchroom, that the gyms are on the other side of the building, so that ALC students to use gyms would have to walk through the building, and there are only 2 banks of restrooms in our middle school. So we can't just say, these are the middle school restrooms and these are the ALC restrooms, because it's not set up that way. So there would be overlap in the restrooms and the hallways as well. Right? We would work to minimize that, but there would be absolutely no guarantee that we can keep them 100% separated, because we cannot. The capacity issues, it does limit potential enrollment growth for the ALC and the middle school. So if you look back here, the middle school and ALC site together becomes quite large. And the public perception, there is a concern by many that I talk to of having high school aged students mixed with middle school age students. Okay. Option E is does have the largest budget savings. So everything that's on this option E budget is the exact same as the last 3, with the addition of the $50,000 and $10,000 additional savings from closing the McKinley site. So it's an additional $60,000 a year simply in operations around utilities and supplies, to a tune of $750,000 a year ongoing. Option F, the 3 elementary schools. So option F would have Roosevelt, Jefferson, and Lincoln all become pre-K through 4th grade sites. Right? You see the enrollments there, along with the capacities. The middle school would have to become a 5-8 site to take on 5th grade. Right? High school would have no grade changes. The ALC would be able to close and move to the McKinley site. The option F, 3 elementary schools considerations, it preserves that perception of neighborhood schools. All right, for those that still say, I want neighborhood schools, this preserves that. All right, it allows, one of the academic environment pieces is that you have a pre-K program that is spread out over 3 different sites. It allows for a more traditional elementary model for grades pre-K through 4 with fewer transitions than grade banding. Right. 5th graders get early exposure to middle school, easing the transition. We've already talked about that one. The capacity issues is that it does limit the potential enrollment growth for all levels of programming. And the public perception is that elementary age students mix with middle school students. So once again, where you would potentially have positive public perception around the whole idea of neighborhood schools, you might have negative perception that still lingers out there around 5th grade moving to middle school. The option F, 3 elementary schools budget is significantly less than some of the other ones at $180,000. All right, that is because running 3 sites, we need to staff 3 sites fully. So you can see over on the left what we would be able to reduce and what that total would be. Once again, that is an ongoing savings. There's been a lot of discussion. Do you want me to stop there, Mr. Chair, and see if there's any questions before I move on to class sizes? So the upcoming pieces are around class sizes and some comparisons. And then savings over time and the committee rankings.
I would say, I would like you to finish.
Okay.
Because I think they all tie in with what you're getting to here.
Okay, so looking forward, and this is rolled, if you notice, this is rolled to the 25-26 school year. So this is what elementary class sizes would look like at the 3 different sites if we do not reorganize. I'm simply using the numbers that each one of those sites had as of Monday and going through and putting in what their sections are. Now, I will say this one caveat is that currently this year, the sites there's a total of 47 sections. This is reducing 1 to match up with that budget that I talked about at the beginning, which would be removing 1 classroom teacher. Right? So both this and the next slide look at a 46 section combined elementary school program. What I did was then I went through and I highlighted, I ran the averages, and then I highlighted in yellow anything that was 28 or above, and I highlighted in red anything that was 30 and above. So what you can see is that if we did not reorganize, Jefferson would have first grade average out at 29, second grade at 34, and fourth grade at 32. Lincoln would have first grade at 29, fourth grade at 34, and fifth grade at 29. And Roosevelt would be at 28 in first grade and 35 in third grade. So a discussion would have to be there, because I think once we hit 35, especially in third grade, we have to say something has to happen, that we can't do that, okay? If we were to reorganize, just by being able to shift our students down to 2 sites, our elementary students down to 2 sites, what you see is that we would be looking at Jefferson, at Lincoln, and at Roosevelt, all right? Roosevelt, I did not run the averages because that would be, that 386 is not all kindergartners, all right? It would be kindergartners, all of our K-4, and all of our early childhood pieces, okay? But if we were to reorganize, what we would be able to see is that Jefferson would be in the mid-20s through first, second, third grade. They would have a large fourth grade, and they'd be back down to the mid-20s for fifth grade. Lincoln would be in the upper 20s for second, third, and fifth, and would be in the mid-20s for first and fourth. And Roosevelt would have 9. We would roll forward approximately 200 kindergartners. 200 kindergartners is what we would be rolling forward to expect, and we would run 9 sections of that. To be able to see those side by side, this is just simply not reorganizing on the top and reorganizing on the bottom. Same section, same total number of sections across the 3 sites. The budget savings over time, you heard me reference numerous times that those budget savings were ongoing. So one of the pieces that I wanted to show you is, what does ongoing mean for a district like us? If we went with option A, the status quo, obviously we're going to need to cut more, okay, than just what is up there. This is simply what these options could save us, all right? But if we cut $160,000, then we balloon that out over years, 3 years, 5 years, and 7 years. When you start looking at the different options, you see the dramatic differences in some of them. Obviously, with that option E being the largest, and option B, C, and D all being identical. right? And option A and option F being fairly close to each other. So that is what the budget savings over time would look like out 1 year, 3 year, 5 years, and 7 years. This does not account for any type of inflationary role or inflationary increase from the state or anything like that. Okay, this would simply be what our or any contract negotiations. It doesn't include anything like that. It's just what it would look like in today's dollars. Okay. The last piece that I have for you is here are all 6 options that were ranked. And I realize this is a little bit small and that it's a little bit difficult to read. And I have to preface that we do not, when we run these, we do not have, thank you, Nosco, we do not have control over what colors that each bar is, all right? So it can be a little bit confusing. So the dark blue-ish, which is this color right here that I'm circling, that is the top choice or the number 1 choice by different people. So this was the reorganization committee that ranked this now, all right? Your red is if they ranked it 2nd, orange is 3rd, green is 4th, purple is 5th, and then of course we went back to blue instead of picking a different color for lighter blue is 6th. So if you simply look at which option got the most first rankings, like most people thought this should be the one that we do first, it was option D, the previous plan. The one that received the second most first place rankings was option F, the 3 elementary schools. If you look at where something would rank with the same number of first and second rankings, if you want to do it that way, it would be, once again, option D first, but then it would go to option B as the runner-up. So it all depends on kind of how you want to look at these rankings. There was a clear number 1 in the rankings. There was, a different number 2 depending on how you look at the rankings. Mr. Chair, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Benty. Really some interesting, deep options here. So with that, board members, I will open it up to you. What questions, remembering that we will have 2 further public meetings, open meetings to discuss this and review this. So anyone have anything right off the top of their head? Mr. Olson, thank you.
Yeah, you mentioned several times that you think that we're going to increase our population, which all the studies saying we're going to drop or level off.
No, what I'm saying is if it were to increase, we want to make sure that we have room to accommodate that. We are up a little bit this year from what we projected, but that is also common across other southeastern schools, Big 9 schools this year. So I was just with other Big 9 superintendents last week, and many of them were saying, yeah, we're up, 20 kids, we're up 50 kids, we're up there, all right? But I'm not forecasting, and nothing is showing us a enrollment increase. We did have a little one this year, but if that were to happen, if more housing were to open up in Faribault, that could draw in more students we want to make sure that we're ready for.
Of course, we've been saying that, for more housing, it doesn't come around. It's expensive. Also that some of these options, you're taking away from the neighborhood schools. Yeah, that some of the, as was Garfield and Washington and stuff like that, Then also with the 5th grade moving to so they didn't like that, to the 5th grade to the middle school?
So the committee put it as one of their options. So I guess I should explain what we did. So one of the things that we did was in one of the last meetings, we had done a lot of information that the committees had been given. They had seen the schools, and then I said, at your tables, I said, come up with different possibilities, different reorganization possibilities. So I had a whole bunch of different reorganization possibilities. What I did then with that information was I took the presentation from last year, I took all the research that I had provided for the committee as well as for this board. I took all of their options that they had put together, I threw it all into artificial intelligence. And I said, here's the objective. I said, please create multiple possibilities with considerations, positive and negative, around this. The reason I did that was, one, it greatly increases the speed of work that you can do, but also it takes the human emotion out of it. I didn't want any of my emotion to be in this decision. And then it spit out a bunch of different options. And then you have to, if you know anything about artificial intelligence, there's hallucinations in there. So you got to be able to go in and clean those up as well. So after we did that, these were the options that it came up with. If you're talking about they that were not happy with fifth grade to the middle school, that was a loud piece from our community back in November. I don't know if that will be a loud piece in our community again, but it was something from the committee that they said, yeah, we think that this needs to be an option that the school board takes another look at.
Ms. Boudreaux.
Mr. Chair, thank you first to the committee and to our superintendent for these comparables, and they're very detailed. I appreciate that. I'm hopeful that we can deal with some of our forecasted shortfalls in the future, and I wondered that my questions centers around that. And looking at the budget savings over time, we probably don't have a workup on that, but I know we are projected to have less income than we need, and I'm just wondering if options B, C, and D, how that would help us, if you're not prepared to answer that question.
No, I can give you a roundabout answer around that. So with Barbie just coming on board, we obviously haven't had a chance. We've discussed it, but she's heard numbers from me. She has not been able to go in and verify those numbers, which with my vast background in finance, with my history license, she should probably double check those numbers, right, Barbie? But when I spoke with the previous director of operations and business, we were forecasting somewhere between $500,000 to maybe $700,000 of what we would be short for the next budget. Right. And that was a number that we had kind of settled in on, and the board had heard that number a little bit here and there, that, that $500,000, maybe pushing as high as $750,000 that we were forecasting to be short. Understanding that last year's reductions were not the end of it, okay? So one of the goals that I know I have had is, how do we get budget neutral? This is my 12th year in the district. We've cut every year except for one, and that one year was because we passed a levy. Right? So we have reduced every year except for one that I've been here. So my biggest push financially has been, how do we get budget neutral? With options B, C, and D, it does afford us that possibility of being budget neutral and then not having to cut, having to simply adjust based off of enrollment year by year, if that makes sense.
Mr. Chairman, that sounds wonderful, that we have at least some options to look at.
Mr. Chair?
Ms. Moore.
Yes, I just have a question with, I think it's option C, if you move the fifth to Faribault Middle School. Have we thought about how much contact the fifth graders will have with will this be in a separate wing, a separate space?
So
how will that work?
there's only so much we can do with a separate wing, because you have, if you know how the middle school is laid out, it's kind of like spider legs almost, with classrooms going off both sides of them. And then each one of those legs exits outside, all right? And it's all one level. So a lot of people don't realize that we don't have the luxury of being able to say, ALCO in the second floor, middle school will be on the first floor. It's all one level at our middle school. So we would have to calculate the number of rooms that they would need. The issue with that is that you might be able to say, well, guess what? They need 6 rooms, but they need Phi-Ed, and they need art, and they need some of this. Well, those rooms are in different areas of the building, so that would require travel. For sure, 100%, they have to travel across the building for Phi-Ed. All right. Could we look at an art room? Potentially. All right. But if you get into the wrong number of rooms, then you don't necessarily have a hallway or a wing that's ALC. You might have a hallway plus 1 room in the next leg. All right. So it really is, that's why I said we cannot guarantee, and we also have to be very, very careful. I don't believe, I don't believe we would be able to build walls because they would interfere with exit routes out of the building.
Right.
Just the way that building is
So that would-
situated.
Safety features. Huh?
Correct. Yes. Fire escape routes.
Okay, thank you.
Cassie?
Well, this is super uncomfortable to talk about out loud, and I'm fairly confident I'm going to get tore apart tomorrow, starting with the newspaper. Moving ALC students to the middle school as opposed to a private area of the high school. Can you talk about the rationale, the reasoning why it's not being presented?
Yes, so that was actually brought up in the committee by some of the committee members, they said, how come there is not a proposal in here to move ALC to the high school? I am still under, I should say, and I just lost the term, an indefinite tabling of discussing or any planning around moving the ALC to the high school. So that was an option that I will take ownership for that. I did not put together because I am still under orders by this board to not bring anything like that to you.
I can answer that a little more in detail. I believe that was 3 or 4 years ago.
That would have been under Mr. Sesker, the
That's
previous
correct.
superintendent.
When we were looking at moving ALC or like that, and that got brought up, and the amount of emails and calls I received alone, which was over 300, and then discussing with ALC, people said that is not a viable option. So the board did to table or postpone indefinitely that move for ALC to go to the high school. So that's what happened then. It was approved by the board, and that was the will of the board.
Could we ever, I would like to, when we started this process, and no disrespect, because I really appreciate that this is coming back in a really organized and community-driven fashion, but I'd like to see all of the options, whether I'm going to vote for it or not. I'm a believer in, I don't know if I would be able to choose that, but I need to see all of the options, in my opinion. And I feel like we're doing kind of a disservice to our community by not looking at all of the options, whether they're uncomfortable. I was on this board 4 years ago, and that's why I made my original comment of tomorrow morning I'm going to get torn apart. But I think we were elected to do uncomfortable things, and we have to look realistically and unemotionally. So, I don't know.
Mr. Chair and Mr. Benty, I maybe missed this, but I thought when we were pursuing this in the April, May timeframe, whenever we started planning for this, this reorg committee and whatnot, I did think that nothing was off the table, but maybe I misunderstood that, and maybe that's just me misunderstanding that. So if I did, and I agree with Ms. Steve, I have no idea if I support it or not either, but I did think that everything was on the table with all of our 7 buildings, and also potentially looking at anything outside the district, inside the community, if you will. But anyway, I could be wrong.
So I will say, and I apologize, I did not mention this earlier. So one of the pieces that when I looked at this is that I did not look at building anything. I did not look to, break ground and either build or to add on to any current site. And the reason for that is it is incredibly expensive, and we are not in the financial position, in my opinion, to break ground anywhere with the enrollment that we currently have and with the footprint that we currently have in the district. Secondly was I have traveled around and looked at what is existing out there to rent, not to purchase. The piece with that is that if we were to rent, it would be charged back to our taxpayers in lease levy dollars. And we do not have a lot of lease levy dollars left, simply because SevSec, our local co-op, is part of our lease levy. So they eat up a good chunk of that. So there were some restrictions that I kind of imposed upon myself, just from a financial considerations for the district.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, and I'd really like to thank the community, all the committee members that participated, 6, 7, 8 meetings, whatever you all had, and the tours and all that stuff. I do have several questions, but I think I will email them to you and Mr. Benty, and I think we had talked before, we compile a list. I don't want to stay here till midnight with all my questions. So I'll send those over on specific topics. Or
Dr. Robichaud.
Mr. Chair, thank you. And I, too, as indicated by Mr. Wolf, have a list of questions and observations. I just want to thank the committee for all of their hard work. I know that you spent blood, sweat, and tears to get up to these recommendations. The one thing that I found missing, and you talked about it a little bit, is I'd like to see the research based on these options. What does it mean for student achievement? To me, it looks like we're talking about facility reorganization, but missing is that student achievement part. So I'd really like to see more of that included in this. Why is the rationale? What does it mean? You talk about the purpose of optimizing outcomes, learning, educational outcomes. What are those outcomes that are going to come out of each one of these options that are presented, both positive and negative? So I'd like to see that. Also missing is the cost of any transportation that's related to each of these options, because that has to be factored in as well. So, but I have another bunch of other questions, and I'll forward those to you as well. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just for the public that's here or watching online or reading the newspaper, the questions and answers will be public.
Yes.
Right.
We will address them at the next,
Thank you.
the next session, yes.
Mr. Chair?
Ms. Moore.
Yes, I know as a rep for the ALC, and I think we, as far as achievement in education, every student, I think, is important. And and for the ALC, I really think it's important for them that they have their own space. I think that was brought out too a few months ago. But I really believe that they need their own space, and I think that's important. So that's my take right now.
And I hope my comments didn't insinuate anything. Of course,
No.
every student in our school system is valued.
No, I didn't take it as that.
Yeah. Above all else, I know exactly how it feels to be in a building that you don't want to be in.
Right.
So
No,
if
I
anybody could
didn't-
offer that perspective,
I didn't take it
It'd be
as
the
that,
one.
and I think you're right, we need to look at all the options, but for me, I think it's very important that that the students in the ALC have their own building. So I think, I'm narrowing my options right now, even though I tried to be, open a bit and asked a few questions, so.
Well, for one, that's why we're going to have 2 more public meetings. We're going to do this, we're going to vet this very thoroughly, even though the committee has, and I want to thank the committee and all that work beforehand, but just a couple of thoughts on my end here. One, when we asked Mr. Benty again in April or whatever it was to represent this, and yes, the comment was, we all agreed, nothing was off the table. Okay, so it was presented to, ideas and things were presented to Mr. Benty and the committee. Okay, so to me, those ideas were presented there. So whether the ALC was presented to bring back to the high school there or whatever, and then then the committee would recommend, and how they grouped them all together was to come with recommendations to the board. Okay, options. And we'll mull them over and ask our questions, et cetera. But that was the work of the committee. So coming up with 6 options here is impressive. But I guess one of the questions here, don't want to go too deep into the weeds here. So right off the top of your head, Mr. Benty, were there any options 7 through 15 that you would like to mention that just wouldn't work, whatever? I think maybe that's what Ms. Steve's alluding to. I know I'm putting you on the spot now.
There was, there were some different options that were floated around option F, which was to have to have 3 pre-K through 5th grade buildings and still move the ALC to McKinley. Space-wise, that simply would not work because we don't have enough rooms at Jefferson, Lincoln, and Roosevelt to accommodate all of McKinley and all of the 3-year-olds and 4-year-old programming in those buildings. So with keeping 5th grade there as well. So that's why when you see that option F, it is doing that, but moving the 5th grade to the middle school. Other options, there are different ways that you can grade band. So one of the options is, would pre-K through 1st grade fit at Roosevelt? The answer to that is yes, it would. However, it leaves 0 room for growth for our early childhood program. And our early childhood program is, by research-wise and by what the results that this board has seen, our best performing program at this point. So we want to make sure that we're able to grow that. If we did the pre-K through 1st grade at Roosevelt, which space-wise we could do, it would be tight, but we could do it. It would not allow us to grow our pre-K programming at all. So there were options that are like that on what you can do versus what makes sense to do. Obviously, with keeping an eye to the future as well. The last thing I want to do is reorganize and then turn around in 2 or 3 years and say, guess what? We need to do it again. We want this to be at minimum a 10-year decision.
Thank you, because obviously this decision changes, and I stated this the first time, this changes the delivery, how we deliver to instruction to students in Faribault, grade-wise, maybe pedagogical-wise, I don't know. Maybe with the grade banding, et cetera, you can do all sorts of different things. It is, but along with Dr. Robershow, being a former teacher, I'm very much concerned, always want to know about student achievement. Mm-hmm. And as this board learned a long time ago, 75% of our board meetings should be about student achievement.
Yes.
And we haven't been. And this gives us a good jumping board here to really have something which we can have our students be successful and really improve. And to me, just right off the top of my head going, if we can, and I know finances and student achievement don't go hand in hand. It's just a very complex, that's why we're going to take our time. But if we save some money here by doing something, and we don't have to reduce opportunities for kids, which would lead to student achievement. And research base would show us that in different things we can do and that. So I didn't want to spend the rest of our meeting saying what other options were there. I mean, we can talk about them briefly, if something comes up. But now that we have 6, I guess I'd like to hone in on those in our next meetings and go from there. But and if they come up, which you said, I mean, people talk to us, say, did you think about this? What about this? What about this? We'll talk about it at our next meeting. Let's do that and go from there. I think that's the best way to do it. So.
I just, excuse me, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to clarify, because I understand what you're saying, I think, but I would, like Ms. Steves, you were saying you'd like to see all the options that are possible. Is that what you were saying? Is that, and I agree with that. You may disagree, but.
And not to interrupt,
Yeah.
but what I'm hearing is some of the options that came up during the committee level were shot down for feasibility, correct? Outside of the one that were.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of the pieces where I want the board to have choice, but, there was also the understanding of, I mean, I can throw 6 more options at you by the end of this week. Would I recommend as superintendent of this district any of those? No. I mean, if we're just being honest, I put 6 on there, and I have personal views on all 6 of those. I have professional views on all 6 of those as well. But I purposely did not put options on there that I could not support as your superintendent, so.
And that, I mean, I respect the committee's work, and so I feel like if we were given more options as a board, I don't want to come to the next meeting and the meeting following that, we're all going to have 7 different options, and we're not going to be able to make a consensus at all. Do I want to learn and grow myself and walk myself through the committee's, thought process as far as the options that didn't make it for? I think I would be open to that, but knowing moving forward, we're working on essentially these 6, there might be small tweaks.
Yes, oh, definitely. Great point. Okay, anything else?
Mr. Chair, yeah, I would have just liked to see some of those options, but, so I agree with you on your first point there.
Dr.
So
Robichaud.
just one comment, and I understand and appreciate what fellow board members are saying, but I would suspect that, Mr. Benty, with you and the committee, you brought forth these 6 recommendations that you think are doable. The others may not be doable. So we could spend, the next 5 hours talking about options that aren't doable. Why should we spend our energies on that and work on those options that you recommend and the committee recommends are doable in this district?
Great points. Any further discussion? Excellent. So again, as a reminder to everyone, questions, comments, suggestions, thoughts to Mr. Benty and myself here, and all those will be presented publicly at our work session, and I probably don't want to step out of it, probably our work session agenda will be mostly reorganization, I would assume, and that's what we're here for as well, so thank you.
How much
Mr.
space
Chair?
do you have on your computer?
Mr. Olson.
Are these options going to be on the website?
They already are, they're on board
Okay, I
book.
haven't looked, okay.
Somebody have something over?
Yeah, just a clarification. If we have questions, we send them to Mr. Benty and you?
Yes.
And you, okay.
And we will forward all the questions from every board
Thank you.
member to
I
the
just
rest of
want
the
to
board.
clarify that.
Yep.
Thank you.
I just had a question. How much room do you have on your computer?
I cleared out my inbox mostly today, so I'm ready.
You too?
I'm ready. We're ready. I shouldn't say that about that. Okay. So agenda item number 11, dates to remember, October 1st, 2024, 3:45 p.m., Policy Committee. God, we're talking about October already. Where'd that go? October 7th, 2024, 5:30 PM work session. October 14th, 2024, 7:30 AM Finance Committee. That's virtual. October 28th, 2024, 5:30 PM regular board meeting. Agenda item number 12. Is there a motion to move to a closed session as permitted by Minnesota Statute 13D.03 for negotiation strategies with Local 70?
So move.
Thank you, Ms. Boudreau.
Second.
And Mr. Wolf, the second. Any discussion? Discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We'll go into closed session in 5 minutes.